There are mornings when the body refuses to rise, not from fatigue, but from a nameless weight that holds you down. You call it laziness, a lack of discipline. But Carl Jung saw a different truth, this not as a failure of will, but as a whisper from the soul, a profound, non-negotiable need to stop. It is the moment your entire being aches not for more doing, but for listening. In a world that worships relentless haste, stopping is seen as failure. But to the soul, this stillness is a necessary winter. It is the sacred season where life retreats to its roots, where silence does its quiet work of reconstruction, and where the darkness itself becomes the fertile soil from which new dawns are born. We begin with a profound and disorienting weariness, one that saturates the very fabric of your being. This is not the honest fatigue of a long journey well traveled. This is the exhaustion of dislocation, the deep, soul-level tiredness that comes from having journeyed too far from the shores of your own authentic self. Imagine a ship on a vast open ocean. The sails are furled, not because there is no wind, but because the will to catch it has vanished. The vessel drifts, pulled by invisible deep-sea currents, moving with a purpose that is not its own. There is a profound stillness, but it is not peaceful. It is the stillness of surrender to a course that feels fundamentally wrong. This is the metaphorical landscape of this exhaustion. You are in motion, yet you are going nowhere that matters to the core of who you are. You have been following a map drafted by the expectations of others, by culture, by family, by a version of success that never resonated with the quiet inner truth of your spirit. The great psychologist Carl Jung would describe this as a state of profound misalignment with the self. You have been investing your vital energy, your libido, into upholding a persona, a mask designed for the outside world that has grown too heavy, too constricting. The life you are living has become a performance, and you are an actor who has forgotten his original lines. Every action, every goal achieved that was not truly yours, rings with a subtle internal dissonance. It is the feeling of being a finely crafted instrument, played by a stranger's hands. Every note, though technically formed, is off-key, a silent, aching betrayal of the music your soul was born to make. This exhaustion, then, is not a sign of failure or weakness. It is, in fact, a critical act of self-preservation initiated by the psyche itself. Your soul, in its infinite wisdom, is withdrawing its consent. It is refusing to power a life that is a lie. The weariness is the direct result of your soul saying, "No more. I will not lend my light to this illusion any longer." The message within this profound tiredness is not one of despair, but of redirection. It is a sacred, albeit uncomfortable, intervention. This exhaustion is your soul's way of dropping the anchor, of forcing a stillness upon you so that the frantic, external noise can fade away. It is creating the necessary silence for you to hear the faint, true signal of your own inner compass, the one that has been there all along, waiting for you to stop long enough to listen. It whispers a single, powerful command: stop. It is time to remember who you are and to find your way back to the path that is uniquely and irrevocably yours. There is another kind of weariness, one that has little to do with the present moment and everything to do with the ghosts of the past. This is the exhaustion of ungrieved endings. It is a heaviness that does not come from what you are doing, but from what you have never fully felt. It is the weight of the unfinished, the unspoken, the unresolved. These are the losses that arrived without ceremony, the goodbyes that were swallowed in silence, the quiet deaths of dreams, relationships, or old versions of yourself that were simply left where they fell. In the attic of your psyche, there are suitcases packed with memories you have never dared to unpack. They sit in the shadows, covered in the dust of time, their contents, the sharp shards of a heartbreak, the faded photograph of a hope, the heavy cloak of a disappointment, still holding their emotional charge. You walk past them every day, pretending not to see them, but your soul feels their persistent presence. They are uninvited guests who have taken up permanent residence in the mansion of your inner world, occupying space and quietly draining the light. Carl Jung understood that the psyche demands ritual. It requires acknowledgement. When an experience, especially a painful one, is not consciously processed and integrated, it does not vanish. Instead, it descends into the shadowy realms of the unconscious, where it continues to live a half-life, whispering from the basement of your being. It becomes a psychic entity, a fragment of energy that is trapped in time, and it requires a constant, subtle effort to keep it contained. The profound tiredness you feel is the energy your soul is expending to hold this vigil for losses you never allowed yourself to mourn. It is the cost of keeping the vault sealed. Your vitality is being diverted to guard these tombs, leaving you feeling perpetually drained in your daily life. The message embedded in this specific exhaustion is both a plea and an invitation. It is your soul's way of saying, it is time to light a candle for what has ended. It is a call to perform the sacred rituals you have postponed, to finally open those old suitcases, not to relive the pain, but to acknowledge it, to speak the words of farewell that were stuck in your throat, to thank the old version of you for their service and to lay them gently to rest. This exhaustion is the threshold to a profound and necessary cleansing. It is the deep, organic knowing that before you can fully step into the new, you must first grant a dignified ending to the old. It is in this courageous act of closure that you will reclaim the life force currently held hostage by the ghosts of your past, allowing you to move forward lighter and more whole. We now arrive at a weariness that feels less like a weight and more like a drowning. This is the exhaustion of emotional saturation, a profound fatigue born not from your own life, but from the lives of others. It is the unique burden of the empath, the highly sensitive person, the emotional custodian, the one for whom the world's unseen currents are not abstract concepts, but tangible forces. If you experience this, you are not just living your own story. You are a living, breathing receiver, constantly tuning into the subtle frequencies of every room you enter, every conversation you have, every unspoken tension that hangs in the air. You are the sponge of the world, unconsciously absorbing the sadness of a friend, the stress of a colleague, the anger of a stranger, the collective anxiety of the news cycle. You do not hear emotion. You feel it. You carry it in your body as if it were your own. For a long time, this may have felt like a gift, a deep capacity for connection and compassion. But a sponge can only hold so much before it becomes waterlogged, heavy, and unable to perform its function. There comes a point of critical mass. The mirror of your psyche, once clear and capable of reflecting a coherent self, begins to fracture under the pressure of 1,000 different reflections. You look within and see not a single image, but a kaleidoscope of fragmented feelings, a shard of someone else's grief here, a sliver of another's panic there. It becomes impossible to distinguish which emotions are authentically yours and which you have inadvertently collected. This is not a psychological failure. It is a systemic overload. Your energetic boundaries have become porous, and your inner world has been colonized by the outer world's chaos. The exhaustion that follows is a biological and spiritual necessity. It is your system's ultimate defense mechanism, a circuit breaker being tripped to prevent a complete burnout. This deep, soul-deep tiredness is not a sign that you are broken, but that you are full. It is a non-negotiable demand from your deepest self to retreat, to close the gates, and to turn your empathic abilities inward. The message is clear and urgent. Stop taking in. It is time to digest, to release, and to reclaim the territory of your own being. This is a call to cultivate what the Jungian analyst Marie-Louise von Franz called the Virgin of the Soul, that inviolable, sacred inner space that belongs to you and you alone. The fatigue is forcing you to build boundaries, not as walls of isolation, but as membranes of discernment. It is compelling you to learn the sacred art of compassion without absorption, of empathy without enmeshment. It is guiding you to become a conscious vessel, one that can choose when to open and when to seal itself for the necessary sacred work of self-purification. and return to your own emotional center. There is a unique and profound weariness that arises not from being lost, but from being precisely in between. This is the exhaustion of the threshold, the soul-deep fatigue of metamorphosis. It is the tiredness of a traveler who has definitively left one shore behind, yet the new land has not yet risen on the horizon. You are suspended in the great formless expanse of the in-between. This is the liminal space, a term from anthropology that Jung adopted to describe this critical psychological passage. It is a sacred and terrifying nowhere, a gestational void. The person you were, with their certainties, their identity, their familiar patterns, has dissolved. That chapter has ended, but the person you are becoming has not yet taken form. You are a blueprint without a structure, a soul without a solid vessel. You look in the mirror and the reflection is unfamiliar. The old labels no longer stick. The old motivations have lost their power. You are, quite literally, betwixt and between. This exhaustion is fundamentally different from all the others. It is not the fatigue of depletion, but the fatigue of intense, invisible creation. All of your psychic energy is being drawn inward, away from the outer world, to fuel this profound alchemical process. The conscious ego feels this as a loss of vitality, a foggy-minded inertia, a profound desire to retreat and be still. It feels like a kind of death because, in a very real way, it is. The world, which values constant visibility and productivity, misunderstands this state entirely. It calls it depression or stagnation, but the soul knows it as a sacred incubation. The weariness you feel is the necessary condition for this rebirth. It is the pressure and the darkness that the new form requires to push its way into existence. This tiredness is not asking you to do anything. In fact, it is insisting that you stop doing. It is a forced stillness, a divine patience imposed upon you so that the delicate work of the unconscious can proceed without interference. Your only task in this space is to endure the uncertainty, to resist the frantic urge to rush back to the old shore or to desperately swim toward a mirage of the new. You must learn to float in the ambiguity, to trust the invisible currents of your own transformation. This exhaustion is the surest sign that you are not stuck, but rather that you are in a profound state of gestation. The new world is coming. The new you is being born. This weariness is the quiet, heavy, and holy blanket of darkness that tucks you in while the most important work of your life is being done, deep in the silent workshops of the soul. We arrive now at the final form of soul tiredness, one that carries a unique quality of restless stagnation. This is the exhaustion of dammed waters. It is not the fatigue of emptiness, but the much heavier fatigue of fullness with no outlet. It is the weight of potential that has been silenced, of a voice that has been restrained, of a vital creative force within you that has been blocked, denied, or postponed. Imagine a powerful, majestic waterfall, a natural torrent of energy and expression. Now, imagine a dam built squarely across its path. The water, once dynamic and free-flowing, does not disappear. Instead, it piles up behind the obstruction. Its movement ceases, its vibrant energy turns stagnant. The surface may appear calm, but beneath lies a building, immense pressure. This is the precise metaphor for this kind of exhaustion. You feel not empty, but overly full, pregnant with ideas, visions, and unexpressed life that has nowhere to go. This creative life force is what Jung identified as the libido, the psychic energy that yearns to manifest, to build, to bring something new and meaningful into the world. When this energy is blocked by fear, by practicality, by a demanding routine, or by the critical inner voice that says it's not good enough, it does not simply vanish. It turns back inward upon itself. Unused creativity does not dissipate, it congeals. It becomes a heavy, stagnant pool within the psyche. This stagnant energy manifests as a profound sense of lethargy, irritability, and a vague, persistent dissatisfaction. You may feel a dull envy watching others create, a sense of being a spectator in your own life. The soul, in its innate drive toward wholeness and expression, experiences this blockage as a profound violation of its nature. The weariness you feel is the energy of 1,000 unlived lives, a symphony of unheard melodies, all pressing against the walls of your being with nowhere to flow. This exhaustion, therefore, is a crisis of expression. It is the soul's rebellion against a life that is too small, too quiet, too safe. It is the weight of your own unlived potential. The dam might be built from the stones of obligation, the mortar of someday, or the reinforced concrete of self-doubt. The message in this specific tiredness is not an invitation to rest, but a powerful, urgent summons to act. It is a call to rebellion. It declares, you must break the dam. You must allow the waters to flow. This fatigue is the final warning before the spirit begins to turn against itself in bitterness and resignation. It is a demand to reclaim your voice, your vision, your right to make a mess, to try, to fail, and to create. It does not demand a masterpiece. It demands motion. It asks for the first small, defiant act, the sentence written in a journal, the few chords played on a guitar, the sketch in a notebook, the dance in the living room. This weariness is the gathering pressure itself, and it will not subside until you pick up the tool, any tool, and begin, however clumsily, to chip away at the obstruction and set the powerful, life-giving waters of your own creativity free. And so, we arrive at the heart of the matter. These 5 forms of exhaustion are not a malfunction. They are not the breakdown of your spirit, but the beginning of its profound and necessary reorganization. Carl Jung once wrote that there is no birth of consciousness without pain, and no awakening that does not pass through the darkness. Your tiredness is not a full stop, a final ending to your story. It is, instead, a vital comma, a sacred pause in the narrative of your life, creating the essential silence where the next, truer chapter can begin to form. This is the soul's winter. It is a season of radical introspection, where the vibrant foliage of your external identity falls away, revealing the bare, essential architecture of your being. The landscape of your psyche may appear frozen and lifeless, covered in a blanket of quiet stillness. But beneath that seemingly inert surface, a crucial, invisible work is taking place. The busyness of the conscious mind has been hushed so that the deeper intelligence of the unconscious can do its work. Roots are digging deeper into the rich soil of forgotten dreams and innate wisdom. Seeds of new potential, ones that could only germinate in darkness, are beginning to stir, gathering the strength for their eventual push toward the light. Our modern world, with its cult of relentless positivity and perpetual summer, fears this winter. It urges you to turn on artificial lights, to force productivity, to pretend the darkness does not exist. But to do so is to rip a nascent flower from its bulb before it has even begun to grow. The soul cannot be cheated of its necessary cycles. Therefore, the most powerful, courageous act you can perform in this season is to surrender to it. Do not curse the stillness. Do not fear the quiet. Allow the winter to do its perfect work. This silence is weaving the very fabric of your spring. This darkness is nourishing the seeds that the constant glare of the sun could never reach. Your only task is to trust the process, to wrap yourself in the dignity of your own patience, and to know with unshakable certainty that this is not death. It is the silent, holy gestation of the person you are destined to become. And then, one morning, you will wake not to the familiar heaviness, but to a different sensation, a subtle, internal warmth. It will not be from the sun outside your window, but from a new kind of life, a fragile yet determined pulse beginning to beat within your own chest. In that quiet moment, a profound realization will dawn. Every moment of exhaustion had a purpose. Every instance of darkness was not an emptiness, but a vessel holding the sacred promise of light. The winter was never your enemy. It was the silent, faithful guardian of your becoming. So today, if the weight feels immense, if the stillness seems endless, I invite you to do one simple thing. Whisper a word of thanks. Thank your soul for its fierce and loyal guidance, for loving you enough to slow you down, to bring you home to yourself. This is not a path of brokenness, but a pilgrimage back to your essence. Trust this journey with the same unwavering faith you have in the spring that always, always follows winter, and the dawn that is inevitably born from the longest night. Your new beginning is not a distant dream. It is already unfolding, here and now, in the sacred space your weariness so bravely created.